All right, so alhamdulillah rabbil alamin, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'na wa anfa'na bima wa zidna ilma innaka antal alim hakim wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So, welcome everyone to our third and final session. Happy Monday to you all. I noticed a few more people kicking about the campus. So khair inshallah. And today we are looking at inward sin. This is the second book in the series, Pinnacle Papers. Volume 1 was Man, Allah, Justice on Earth, which we haven't talked about, but we've done most of the other ones. So this, I think it's right. This is a nice summary of what we covered on Thursday and Friday, because this ties in. This is going to cover both your personal development, your own relationship with Allah, and at the same time, it's going to tie with a lot of the work that you might be doing here as part of the MSA. So this is called Corruption from Within, the importance of purifying the heart and soul. Now, I can just figure out which way I'm pressing. Hey, how come it's not moving? There we go. So this, I'm going to just talk to you what the book is about first. So as you can see on the screen, this is just a excerpt from the book. To summarize this question, what this question is basically asking is, why is it that we have so much activity happening, right? So Muslims are very, quote unquote, active. We have a lot of, quote unquote, activism. Muslims are organizing conferences and conventions and courses and retreats and intensives, and there's lots of book publishing going on, and there's all these things happening. But we don't seem to see an improvement in our overall condition. We don't seem to see an improvement in our overall state. Instead, we just seem, as the question asks, we just seem to be reverting and regressing. We don't seem to be getting anywhere. What's going on? This seems like a contradiction. How can you have a lot of activity, but then nothing's actually moving in any direction, right? You for example, if you saw a bunch of builders on a construction site, over time you'd expect a house or some building to emerge. You wouldn't expect the building that you see at the beginning to be getting smaller and smaller. Like, are they constructing or demolishing? Right? We get confused. So this essentially what the question is. Like, why are we not seeing growth? Why are we not seeing an improvement? We're not bringing back the Ottoman era. What's happening? So the Sheikh says, what is the answer to this? He says, okay, well, the answer is that Muslims are divided. This is a problem we have. Everything's great on the surface, but inwardly we have division. Inwardly we have disunity. Inwardly, we're not actually cooperating. And then he said, you might ask me, what about the people of evil? The people of evil, they come together upon their falsehood and they cooperate. Because for them, they almost see it as an immediate thing. And you also have to bear in mind when people are up to evil, their job is actually a lot of destruction as opposed to construction. Right? It's much easier to destroy things than to build things. When you build things, you have to work much harder. It takes much longer to build something. You can destroy something in a second. You can destroy something by clicking a button, right? Or pressing a button. It falls apart. So what he's saying to the people of evil, they come together and they can see that we have to serve Shaitan, we have to serve the Dajjal, we have to put the system up. And it's very easy to do, or much easier for them to do. Whereas people who are working for goodness and for righteousness, they have to work harder. They have to put a lot more effort in and work harder to suppress and push aside desires, personal agendas, personal ambitions, things that would just detract from the mission, and also to push away things, these diseases of the heart that come up, like jealousy and envy and rancor and so forth. So he's saying the people of righteousness, they haven't dedicated themselves to this truth the same way the first group dedicated themselves to falsehood. Right? So instead, what happens is people are adorning themselves with the truth and they openly call to it, but secretly they're following their own desires and lusts. Right? In their speech, they talk about something good or something lofty or something promising, but inwardly, it's not backed up. Inwardly, it's not backed up. And this is a major thing in the Quran Allah talks about. You could look at Surah Al-Saf, ayah 2, for example, where Allah says, like, كَبَرُ مَقْتٍ اللَّهِ and تَقُولُ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Right? It's a huge maqt with Allah, something Allah really hates when you say something that you don't do. So when this happens, confidence, people lose, or the Muslims, they're going to lose confidence in each other and they don't work with each other. And this is why things don't happen. So this is why he says this is a bitter remedy to swallow, right? Because it's like I was doing a session this morning, we were talking about Pinnacle Papers Volume 4. What's it called? To every young woman who believes in Allah. And Imam Abu said something very similar. He said, the truth can be a heavy load. The truth can be bitter, right? It's very easy. It's very easy, for example, it's very easy to fall into the victim mentality. It's very easy to say to someone, it's not your fault. You're like this because of your parents. You're like this because of your school teachers. You're like this because of your neighbors. You're like this because of whatever, right? And it's like, oh, that's great. It's not my fault. And you just sit back and blame the world, right? And you just play the victim. But when you get told that, no, actually, you are in control of this, you can do something, that's a huge load to take on. When someone says, no, you actually can do something about this. You actually have a lot of influence on your situation. That can be a heavy weight to take on. That can be a bitter, as the Sheikh says, that can be a bitter pill to swallow. But then it's actually, as you realize over time, it's actually liberating. You realize, hey, I actually can do something. I'm not a victim. I can change things. I can affect improvement in my life. So what he says is we have to move towards inward sin. We have to relinquish inward sin. To look at this, we have to relinquish inward sin. So, but it says, you might ask, what about outward sin? Isn't relinquishing outward sin also part of the remedy? He says, well, that's an inseparable part of it. It's obvious. But this is why we have to talk about the outward and the inward. The outward and the inward have to match. So he says, the Sharia, Islamic revealed law, is in general, on the whole, you have two categories. You have outward statements and actions, such as fasting and praying and joining the right and forbidding the wrong, working for the benefit of Muslims. But then you have things that are connected to the soul and the heart, such as sincerity, humility, love and hatred for the sake of Allah, fear of Allah that exalts His threat, and hope for His reward and pleasure, right? There's an outward aspect and inward aspect. And likewise, the prohibitions are the same. There's the outward prohibitions like murder, theft, fornication, backbiting, slandering, and so forth. But then there's the inward things: arrogance, vanity, ostentation, malice, bearing grudges, being attached to the world, and so forth. Right? There's two aspects to it. And so what the Imam is getting is, yes, outwardly, we might be doing a good job. Outwardly, we might be doing a good job of fulfilling what we've been commanded, avoiding what Allah has prohibited. But inward, we're not paying much attention to the inward. We're thinking that the outward is sufficient. And what the Sheikh is going to, as we're going to look at these statements, is people can fall into this trap where they think that the outward is enough, right? It's enough to carry out the outward. And some people think the opposite. They think it's enough to carry out the inward, right? I'm just going to focus on my personal purification, and I'm not going to try to command the good and forbid the evil. I'm not going to try to fight against injustice. I'm just going to stay in the corner with my subhan, I'll be fine. All right? There's two extremes. So the outward must match the inward. Outward acts of obedience cannot be sound and acceptable to Allah exalted if one is not striving and focusing on those other acts of obedience that are connected to the soul and heart. Because if you're just praying, but you're not thinking about Allah, you don't have khushu', you don't have humility, how is that prayer accepted? Because a thing that we come up in fiqh, for example, is we talk about the difference between sihha and qubul. We talk about the difference between validity and acceptance. Pop quiz, what's the difference? Zaid. Yeah.
What you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
By Allah.
Mm.
There's like more conditions, like hard.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about sihha or validity, that is what a faqih can tell you. Like someone who knows fiqh can tell you your prayer is valid. He can say, okay, your prayer is valid because you had wudu, you were facing the qibla, you prayed within the time, there wasn't any najas on your clothes, your body, or in your place of prayer, and so forth. But a faqih can't tell you your prayer is accepted. That's a matter between you and Allah. Only Allah knows whether your prayer is accepted or not, and He chooses to accept it. And that, like our brother Zayd pointed out, that's going to depend on your presence in the prayer, your concentration in the prayer, right? Are you standing in prayer behind, like by yourself behind the imam, but while you're standing there, you're actually like going over your tax receipts, right? Going over your figures, right? I mean, there's a, right? And one of the things about the prayer, it's an interesting point to make here, is that the prayer, especially like when we're, because we're talking in this lecture about inward sin, and one of those, our major enemies here is Shaitan. And you have to remember that Shaitan, he works hardest when people are doing khair. Shaitan works hardest when people are praying. He works hardest when people are reciting Quran. Shaitan works hardest when people are doing evil thing, doing good things, right? That's why there's a famous story of Imam Abu Hanifa, radiallahu anhu, when he was asked a question. This is mentioned by Imam Nawawi in his Mujmu'. There's a story where Imam Abu Hanifa was approached by a man, and this is, I think, this in Kufa, and the man said, he said, I buried some treasure outside the city. He said, I know the general area. I know the general area, but I don't know exactly where I put it. I just know the general area. Like it's around like this like cluster of bushes, but I'm not exactly sure where it is. So Imam Abu Hanifa says to this man, he says, well, go there tonight by yourself and pray tahajjud. Pray tahajjud at that spot, and then come back tomorrow and tell me. Man comes back tomorrow, the following day, comes back the following day, and he says, I found my treasure. And Imam Abu Hanifa says, see, I knew that Shaitan wouldn't leave you alone. Because what happened was while he was praying, he remembered. While he was praying tahajjud, Shaitan came whispered to him, it's over there. By that tree. You see? Abu Hanifa, he understood this deeply, that's what Shaitan does. Shaitan, that's when he tries to distract you. He tries to put all these ideas in your head when you're praying, when you're reciting Quran, and then when you finish the prayer, all those ideas go away, right? Because he doesn't need to do it anymore, right? So that shows the intelligence of Imam Abu Hanifa, right? Use Shaitan against him. MashaAllah. So the inward and the outward have to match. If there's no sincerity towards Allah in the heart, outward acts of deeds, whatever they may be, will not bring one near to Allah. It's just going through the motions. It's not built in anything. So, and he says, if the tributaries of slavehood to Allah, right? Well, these tributaries being the Muslim's heart and its outward means are cut off, it is simply not possible for him to draw near to Allah. It's just, like he said, it's like sticking fresh fruit to a dry tree. How long is it going to stay there? Now, it's not being replenished by anything. And people run out of steam. This is the thing. When people are simply pretending, when they're kind of just going through the motions, they run out of steam eventually. Because because they ask, well, why am I doing this? They can just burn out because they're not motivated by the love of Allah. They're not motivated by nearness to Allah. They could be motivated by something else. That's why we have this phenomenon. That's a PC to say this. Well, in the UK, we call it Salafi burnout. That's what we call it in the UK. It's Salafi burnout. When people when they get really, really excited and they go really hardcore into Islam, and then they're preaching all the time and they're shouting at people and they're telling people off, and then they just run out of energy. Right? They burn out and they fade, and then it's like they can't do anything else. You see, right? And it's not when your Islam is built on a loving relationship with Allah, and it's actually emotional love of Allah, that's there to back you up, regardless of whatever happens. So, what is the greatest danger? So what is this problem that we have? What is the greatest danger? Like he says here, it's not the invading enemy. It's not the invading enemy who sells in your homeland. It's not the sect that brags rags. It's not people talking about mass destruction, whatever it is. It's that which enables all these things to happen. It's that which enables the enemy to infiltrate. It's that which enables the enemy to take advantage of. And that is what? It's the soul. It's the nafs. This is where the evil lies. Right? Have you ever guys watched that series, the Ertugrul or Osman? Watch those series? You watch that? Now, I'm convinced the writers read these books, right? But if you follow that through, if you follow some of the plot lines of those series, what they'll show is that the unbelievers, whether it's the Mongols or the Crusaders or whoever, they can't do anything to the Muslims. There's no way for them to harm the Muslims unless amongst the Muslims they find a traitor. There has to be a traitor amongst the Muslims. There has to be a traitor who's got some grudge with the Muslim leader. right? Like he wants to be the chief. I can't. Now, what is that? He wants to be the chief. Okay, this is all the nafs. This is he has worldly ambitions. He wants to be the leader of the tribe. He wants to have wealth. He wants to have power, right? So the Christians or the Mongols, whoever, they can say, yeah, we can do that for you. You just have to da 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 da, and so forth. Whereas if that guy doesn't exist, there's nothing the Christians can do. There's nothing the Mongols can do. This is what he said. That's why he says it's this enemy. This is what allows people, this is what allows the enemy to infiltrate. Because when Muslims have that weakness, when they have weakness for the world, when they have worldly ambitions, that's how the enemies of Islam can then pounce and ruin things and take plans off course. Right? That's it's like they were standing like right there as if I wouldn't notice. Mashallah. And it's one of the things as well. Like Imam al-Bulti, like to give you an example, Imam al-Bulti in his book, Al-Hub fil Quran, Love in the Quran, he gives this example, and he says again, this ties in with what we're talking about. Like if you are involved in any type of dawah work, you're involved in preaching, you're involved in teaching these kinds of things. What he said was, he said that the enemies of Islam, they will study you, right? Oh wow, mashallah. It's easier to see now. Yeah, what he said was the enemies of Islam will study you. And he said, if you are going to be in that field, he said the love of Allah has to be paramount. And the love of Allah has to be at the focus of everything, the center of everything, for two main reasons. Number one, when you love Allah first and foremost, that makes your work meaningful. What you say is meaningful. What you say affects people. That's number one. Number two, it protects you from corruption. Because the enemies of Islam, when they see people who are prominent, who are out there doing things, they'll ask, okay, well, what is it that this guy's really after? Does he want fame? Does he want money? Does he want women? What does he want? And then they will act accordingly, right? Has anyone here heard the story of Ibn al-Saqqa? Have you heard that story before? You know a guy called Ibn al-Saqqa? Okay, Ibn al-Saqqa, he was alive in the time of Imam Abdul Qadir Jilani. You can actually read the story. You can find the story online in English and in Arabic. And he was a great scholar in the sense that he had massive amounts of knowledge memorized. He was an excellent debater, right? He could defeat anyone in a debate. But he had a bit of he had some pride, and he had some flaws. Well, let me explain. So what happened with him, with Ibn al-Saqqa, is the Christian emperor in Constantinople wrote to the Khalifa, I believe in Baghdad, and said, send me some of your scholars to debate with my bishops, right? Send me some of your scholars to debate, or one at least, to debate with my bishops. I want to have a Christian-Muslim debate. So Ibn al-Saqqa, because he was famous and he was very, very eloquent and very, very knowledgeable, the Khalifa nominated him and sent him. And he went to Constantinople and he debated the bishops and he wiped the floor with them, right? Completely demolished all their arguments. But the Christian emperor, he had other ideas in mind. He had other ideas up his sleeve. So he invites Ibn Saqqa to his house for dinner. And he lets Ibn Saqqa get a glimpse of his daughter, who wasn't lacking in appearance. Let's just put it that way. So he catches a glimpse of the daughter, takes a liking to her, falls in love with her, and wants to marry her. The Christian emperor, when he's asked, says, yeah, we'd love to marry our daughter to you, but I'd only marry my daughter to a Christian. Ibn al-Saqqa leaves Islam, becomes a Christian, marries the daughter. Because why? Because these enemies of Islam, they'd figured him out. They knew what his weakness was. They said, yeah, he's a great debater. He's a great orator. He's very, very knowledgeable. but there's something else going on. He doesn't really love Allah. He loves himself. He loves dunyawi things. He loves women. So we're going to use this avenue to get to him. And they got to him. And then after he married her, he was struck down with some illness. I think it was an illness that somewhat disfigured him, and then the daughter was no longer interested in him. He was kicked out of the palace, and he ended up just being homeless on the streets of Constantinople. And then eventually, the way the story ends, where a Muslim who knew him visited Constantinople many years later, which is what is now Istanbul, and saw Ibn Sakha on the streets and said, "Why is that you?" And when Ibn Sakha, he affirmed who he was. So he asked him. He said, "Out of all the knowledge you had, what have you memorized? What do you still remember?" He said, "I've forgotten everything." He said, "I've forgotten everything." He said, "The only thing I remember," and it was one ayah in the Quran that he remembered. One ayah, and it was Surah Al-Hijr, ayah 2. رُبَّمَا يَوَدُّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْ كَانُوا مُسْلِمِينَ. Right? All right, Muslimin? Yeah. Right? Maybe those who disbelieve will wish that they were Muslims. That's the only thing he remembered. And then he started dying, like he started going through the agony's death. And the Muslim tried to get him to like face the Kaaba and say the Shahada, and he tried 3 times and he failed 3 times. Then Ibn Sakha died in that state. Right? Sounds like a horror story. Very, very scary. But this is this danger. This is why it's called the greatest danger, because it can lead you straight to destruction if you're not protecting yourself. So he says that's why Islam is nothing more than a refining and a nurturing of the soul. If you can refine the nafs and purify the nafs, then everything else will fall into place. Otherwise, things can go horribly wrong. So how does this danger manifest when the nafs is not controlled? He says, when people are simply making claims, none of the components of Islamic victory will ever bear fruit in their lives. People, as he says here, they do not agree amongst themselves. Their tongues may certainly say one thing, but their souls are strained towards other matters. There's no true objective that unites them, no clear aim that brings them together. They don't trust one another, and they don't love one another. Instead, they love, as he says here, rank and position and wealth and so forth. And their hearts are burning with rage and spite. And then he says they can only work together to a certain extent. They only work together like again, like individuals or organizations. They'll only work together as far as they need to, so that each one can achieve his own personal interest. Once he or she or the organization has achieved its objectives, it steps away and does its own thing. Not interested anymore, right? It's the selfishness. So he says, you might hear or you might see huge crowds, you might hear moving, fear-inspiring words, you might see a brilliant, accurate plan, like people might lay out this big plan that they have, but it doesn't strike fear in an enemy, it doesn't create a union, it doesn't establish university. Okay? This is the thing. We don't want to be in a situation where people are just giving empty platitudes, making flowery speeches, and then inspiring people, and then it's okay, well, what do we do next? Right? What's the actual action plan? Right? It can't just constantly be like toying with your emotions, like getting you all pumped up and then right? What are we actually doing? What are we actually implementing? What are we actually doing in our lives? And this is where we're going to get to later in the lecture. We're actually going to lay out like practical things that you can do to work against this. And this is why we also have this hadith and message of Allah. So something we said, love of this world life and hatred of death. This is this way, and this is what I fear for you. Right? Again, and the source of this danger, again, like as we alluded before, this is giving this worldly life, this dunya, more than its rank, attaching more importance. And Imam Abulti, and this comes again, he gives the example of the exam. He uses the example quite a few times in his books. So he says the way to think of this worldly life is the same way that you would think of an exam, right? I'm sure you've probably had an exam in a room like this, have you? Sorry, I don't mean to relive the trauma, but yeah. Maybe you've had an exam in a room like this, okay? Now, you think about it. An exam, how long is an exam going to be? What, 2 hours, 3 hours? Maximum, right? When you're in an exam, all you know is, I just have to get this done. I just have to get this done. I have to get a good grade, and I don't want to get distracted by, oh, the lights. Oh, look, the floor, right? Oh, look, a fire hydrant. Oh, you don't want to get excited about this, whatever it is, right? The fire alarm. right? You want to stay focused. He says, and that's what this life is. This life is, it's very, very short, but it has long-term consequences. The same way in an exam 2-3 hours, but it will have long-term consequences. So imagine you're thinking about, okay, this is going to affect my degree, it's going to affect my grade, which is going to affect my job opportunities, which is going to affect my social economic status, which is going to affect who I marry, blah, 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 right? You're thinking about all these long chain of consequences. Same thing with this. Same thing with life. When we think about the dunya, you're trying to focus on why you're here. Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I've only created mankind and jinn to worship me. Surah Al-Dhariyat, the 51st chapter, verse 56. That's what you want to stay focused on. So you don't want to think of the dunya as nothing. It has its importance, has its value, but it's your seedbed for the afterlife. You want to stay focused. You don't want to get distracted and taken away from things or taken towards things that just waste your time. So that's why it says here, the worldly life is not just, as some people imagine, money and land and real estate. It's not just money and wealth and riches, but it's anything that the soul, the nafs, inclines towards. Influence and rank and leadership and prestige and reputation and all these types of things. So instead, the response, how do we do this? We have to fight personally with this, and this is the real jihad, which is the jihad of the nafs. Right? Fighting against ourselves, right? That's why there's a hadith in Imam Bukhari's collection where Imam, the Messenger of Allah said after a battle, he said, the jihad al-asghar, jihad al-akbar. Right? We've come back from the smaller jihad to the greater jihad, right? Which is against the soul. Because if this jihad isn't won, then forget the outward jihad. Right? You have to defeat the internal enemy first. If you can't defeat the internal enemy, forget the external enemy. Right? Sometimes you see these, again, I see this stuff in the UK. You see people who love to talk about like physical jihad, but they sleep through Fajr, you know, and they have pot bellies and all these kinds of things. So, well, you've got enemies closer to home, my brother, that you need to fight against, right? Before you think about that. So, and that's why, again, this hadith, the Messenger of Allah says, I do not fear for you poverty. I fear this worldly life will be presented to you on a platter for you, just as presented those before you, and thus you will compete for it just as they competed, and you will be destroyed just as they were destroyed. So the consequences are a few, right? This danger, when we succumb to the desires of the nafs, we let the nafs take over, and we are now competing for worldly ambitions. Yes, we have empty planning and activism that only affects people in the most superficial of ways. We have here, he says here, people wish Islam return to the position of might and authority, but they do so that they can have some position, right? It's like the Khilafah is going to come back and I'll be in charge, right? It's like, that's wrong. That's not the right intention to have, right? And then what happens is to give victory to Islam, they do what other people do to give victory to their movements or denomination, meaningless actions expressed by superficial ideas or organizations. Okay, now this is, I see this definitely in the UK. I don't know what it's like. But what happens is Muslims get involved in activism, and what they do is they will follow the exact same methods and means used by the Conservative Party. No, I don't. Sorry about that. Right? Or what you guys in Canada, this is seriously, I don't know, how do you guys get something called the progressive conservatives?
They don't exist. Now they're just the conservative party.
Oh, that makes sense. Good. I remember seeing it like 10 years ago, like, progressive. Hi, we're the young old people. Okay. Like polar opposites, doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, what happens is Muslims, what they start doing is they adopt the same methods used by secular non-Muslim organizations, right? The same methods used by political parties, the same methods used by Greenpeace, the same methods used by Save the Wildlife, whatever it is. And all of these secular organizations, what they have in common is it's all about blame the government, attack the government, petition the government, and it's nothing to do with internal change. There's nothing to do with internal change. It's nothing to do with bettering yourself. It's nothing to do with even bettering yourself, like in a secular sense, even like tidying up your life, cleaning your room, as they used to say, those kinds of things, right? So when Muslims just follow their method, it's the same empty effect. It's the same empty effect. You just go down to, like in the UK, you just go down to the Parliament building, you go down to Downing Street, you get your placards, and you go, oh, rah, 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 and then, okay. But what happens? What's the effect? Well, you go home and you watch the news, look, there I am. Right? And there's no long-term change because there's nothing internal happening. So he says, for us, we're not like that. We're not like these ideological movements, these psychological movements. No, for us, we want to realize the slave to Allah within our souls. That's what we want to do. We actually believe in changing ourselves from the inward, from the inside, not just this outward sloganeering and chanting and whatnot. Then he says, the other consequences of this, yeah, so obviously, as I was saying, these other ideological movements, they don't do any of this. They don't command any type of change. Instead, they have these methods, debates, arguments, meetings, diversity of opinion, sharing ideas, setting up programs, but there's nothing about internal change, right? There's nothing about bettering yourself as a human being, nothing about drawing near to Allah, right? And he says some of these people, as but the last paragraph, some of these people, they will use their activism as an excuse not to pray on time, as an excuse not to go to the masjid, as an excuse to pray really quickly, right? And not spend any time doing dua, not spend any time doing dhikr. No, brother, I got to get to the march. But this is all about establishing Islam, right? So why aren't you praying? Why aren't you making time for salah? Why aren't you making time for dua? Why aren't you making time for dhikr? I remember like Imam Al-Bulti, there's one lecture where he said, where he went to some conference and it was held at a hotel, and it was all about like Islamic revival. That was like the theme of the conference: Islamic revival and bringing back, the Khilafah and whatnot. And there's different people there, and in the hotel, there's a big like I don't think there was a mesh nearby, but there was like a big prayer room on site. So he says, I'm there on the first day, and I'm hearing like lecture after lecture after lecture about, bring back Islam and bring back Khilafah and do this and do that. And then I wake up the next morning, I go to the prayer room for Fajr and it's empty. So what is this? Like, is this just like intellectual talk? Is this just like chat, intellectual fodder? Are we just talking about Islamic revival, or are we actually doing it? This doesn't fit at all, right? That's why I say all that is just for the common folk. We are devoting ourselves to the movement, right? Therefore, there's no personal worship, there's no spiritual enrichment, none of this stuff. Then, okay. So he said, any Islamic work depends on an indispensable central foundation, which is the rectification of the heart and its being purified of worldly desires. That's obvious. Another one he also brings up is the other extreme, where you get people who confine themselves to purifying the heart, right? As I mentioned this before. So you have the extreme where people they're so involved in the activism, in the marching and the protesting and the debating and so forth, that they think little of praying on time, of adhkar, of dua, of reciting the Quran. But then you have the other side where people that's all they do. It's all internal. It's all I just want to purify my heart. I just want to make dua. I just want to read the Quran. I just want to do my dhikr. Yeah, but you're not, but you're leaving off the outward. You're leaving off amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. You're not addressing any of the injustices in the world. You're not trying to fix anything in your community, right? You're going into your room saying, "Oh Allah, please clean up the litter on the streets." No, you do it. Get your community together, clean it up, address things, teach people, be active, right? We have to have both. We can't have these two extremes, all outward and all inward. Another consequence, and I think this is something that I think a lot of you will be familiar with, is the tribalism, right? Family, tribe, sheikh, jama'ah, party, right? Where people start seeing their group, whatever group they belong to, whatever sheikh they're with, or jama'ah, whatever they're with, they see their group as no longer as a means to Allah, but an end in and of itself, which is a huge danger, right? We have to see ourselves, again, if you think about the words that we use like tariqah or a madhab, they all have this meaning of a path, right? Like a way of going somewhere. What does it all lead to? It all leads back to Allah. It all leads back to Allah. Everything else is a means. You don't, once an organization turns itself from a means and makes itself an end and says, the entire ummah must join us. which is what a lot of them do. I'm not exaggerating. They'll actually say, it is wajib upon the entire ummah to join X, right? They must join our organization, our hizb, our tariqah, our jama'ah. And that's where the salvation of the ummah lies. It's like, okay, you've turned your organization into an end in of itself, right? And then people, what happens is they create a very, very narrow brotherhood. They look down on people who are not part of their organization or part of their jama'ah. And if they see, and then he says, mixed point, he says, and if they see anything good or productive coming from outside of their jama'ah, they just stole it from us. They took that idea from my sheikh. Yeah. It just becomes this petty competition, right? Where instead, what we should be doing is recognize that no, we're all working together. We're all working together. We have different strengths and weaknesses, but we all work together. Every single organization, every single jama'ah, every single sheikh and so forth, every single thing is a means towards the end, and that end is Allah. We're all trying to please Allah. We're all trying to get back to Allah, and we work together. Then some things work better, right? And this is why you look at the history books, like you won't find like any you won't find like like an imam of a madhab saying, yes, everyone must follow my madhab, right? Imam Malik was given that choice. The Khalifa, I think was it Harun Rashid, or I think it was no. I'm sure Maliki will correct me, but the Khalifa did say at his time, he said he wanted to make the Muwatta like the text for the entire Ummah. Like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll just make everyone follow the Muwatta. And Imam Malik's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do, right? Give people the choice. Some people will want to follow the Muwatta and be part of my method. Yes, but I can't impose that upon everyone. That's not what the salvation of we're all going to be Malikis. No, that's not what it's about. You see, but this is the thing that people they fall into that trap. They fall into this fake tribalism where I'm not going to work with you. I'm not going to do like it gets to the point. I was talking to a brother yesterday about it. It gets to the point where people can't even come together and do like group dhikr anymore. Let's get together and have a dhikr. Oh, really? Who's weird you got? Really? And do you have the idhin? So can we just get together and say like La ilaha illallah 100 times? Right? Can we just make it simple? Just come together as believers, right? But instead, people they come with these labels again, and these are like again, it's a false tribal affiliation, and it creates disunity, and it doesn't allow success to happen. So, what is the remedy? What is the remedy? Right? This again, we have here the exam analogy again. A student sits in an exam room, right? You've all been there, right? He asked him, oh, sorry, do you guys say invigilator in this country? You say invigilator, right? You don't say proctor, do you? No. John Proctor is a character in Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible. I don't know where the Americans get that stupid term from. It's invigilator. Yeah, so he asked the invigilator, sorry, in Arabic it's muraqib, in case you need to know, for a glass of water, and when it's brought to him, he drinks the water, his eyes become fixated on the glass, he starts thinking about it, right? All right, then what happens is he forgets about the exam, forgets about the questions, and eventually the invigilator has to come back and say, hey, wake up. You've only got this much time left. You've only got half an hour left. Get on with your paper. And he said, the remedy's the same here. You only have a little time left. You don't know, and you don't even know how long you have left. You have no guarantee that you're gonna wake up tomorrow. You could have a day left. You could have several years left. You don't know. Focus on the task in front of you. Don't waste time with these petty arguments, these debates, the false tribalism, me, or my group, and so forth. Remind this person, the best thing to remind this person is his own conscience. This is what we're going to get into. So he says, remember, my Muslim brother, you have to remember our true identity in this life. And the function for which we've been created, like I said, is worship. And the fact that we are Allah's slaves. So my prayer, my rights, my living, my dying are for Allah alone. We have to keep this in mind. And the road towards using it, again, as he said, it's that jihad. We have to be struggling. And again, it's not a one-off thing. It's not something that you just do once. It's not like you eat a superfood, right? And that's it solves your problems. No, this is a campaign. This is a long-term, constant struggle. Like the battle against shaitan, the battle against the nafs is a thing that keeps going and keeps going, keeps going, keeps happening. It keeps happening, right? It's a constant struggle. There's no way you never wake up one morning and say, "That's it, I won. I beat the nafs. I beat shaitan." Like, no, I didn't. Maybe you did in one instance. Maybe you did on one battle, but the war continues. The war continues. So let's go over the remedy here, right? Some nice practical steps that we can follow. So the first thing is contemplation. Contemplate your essence and your final destination, right? What we call like tadabbur and tafakkur, right? Thinking is the activity of the intellect. Without it, the intellect has no value. Thinking is what frees the intellect from being dominated by the soul and its desires and knots. And he gives several examples from the Quran. And he said the Messenger of Allah himself would spend a lot of time thinking and reflecting. So he says it's very, very important for you as a believer. He says the next the pages that follow is he says it's very, very important for you to find time just to be alone with your thoughts, right? This is something that a lot of unbelievers struggle with, right? If you tell them to be alone with their thoughts, they might have a panic attack because they're so used to having something to distract them, the radio in the background or something. So as a believer, you want to be taking the time off or taking time out on a regular basis, whether it's in the evenings, whether it's when you go for a walk or whatever. You want to be having some time where you can just think. Just think about your state. Think about your future. Think about Allah. Think about what's going to happen in the future. Think about your own death. Think about your own mortality. And just cut out the noise. Cut out like someone was asking me this morning. I can hear my WhatsApp beeping. Oddly enough, right? Someone asked me this morning in the session, said, how do I keep out the fitna of social media? And we had a good discussion back and forth. And I said, well, one thing you can do is turn off your notifications. Yeah, that's right, Zaid. You called me on WhatsApp. No, but no, WhatsApp calling works. But when it comes to like WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube, all these things, if you turn off your notifications, that means what? You only go in when you need to go in. You're not getting bombarded by notifications all day long, right? Especially with YouTube. Like if you're subscribed to a lot of channels on YouTube, you're getting a notification every 5 minutes. And then you're there, like, ooh, should I watch this? Should I watch this? And then it's like, it's only 3 minutes. And then it's only another 4 minutes, right? And you just get distracted, you get carried away, right? But what you thought would just be like 3 minutes and it ends up being a few hours. So if you control your social media use like that, and you only go in when you want to go in, you just say, hey, I have a few minutes. Let me check my Instagram, right? Instead of being bombarded with notifications all the time. Another sister made an interesting suggestion. She said in your YouTube, delete your history. Delete your history, right? And then that means when you open the YouTube homepage, there'll be like no recommendations. It's like, what do we offer you? But well, no. There's ways to do this to limit your distraction. And the other thing the Sheikh says here is again, keep good company, right? Try to find the companies of the righteous. That will help you focus. That will help you stay away from evil things, right? Because when you have good company, they will give you good things to think about. Evil company will give you evil things to think about. So you want to keep good company. Second thing, again, this is kind of weird. This kind of seems like self-explanatory or something like obvious, but and again, I don't know how so much of the culture here, but in the UK, like I've had so many people approach me over the past few years, and they complain to me. They say, "Oh, I have these doubts, or I have waswasa, or I have this, or I have that," and I just say like, "Well, do you have like a morning wird? Do you do like morning adhkar, evening adhkar?" I'm like, huh? Right. And then you have to explain. And so yeah, this is just simple things you should be doing every morning. You should have the car like before you go to bed. When you wake up in the morning, you read a portion of the Quran. You do istighfar. You do salawat al Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is every day, and that's why I'm saying that a harsh, hard heart is often softened by the recitation of Allah's book, by contemplation of Allah's book, right? Having a wird, having a portion of the Quran that you read, right? Whether it's Yasin in the morning, Al-Waqi'ah, Al-Mulk, Sajda, Dukhan, Surat Al-Kahf on Fridays, right? There's lots of things that are mentioned. I even have a blog post called a Daily Wird, which I could share with Zayd to give you. So, sorry. Yes, right? And you want to persist and persevere in both, right? In the recitation of the Quran and doing your dhikr. right? And this is a long-term way of treating the soul. Again, even if what he says here is even if you get distracted or you get delayed, or you're working late or something, you do it later, right? You make it up. You make it up later in the day. Like you have the other portion of Quran, you weren't able to do it. Okay, we'll make it up the following morning, whatever it is. But you want to be consistent, and it's a constant thing. It's a campaign, like I said, it's a campaign. So you constantly think the book of Allah. You do a lot of dhikr, and you busy your heart with the knowledge that He is watching. Again, another one that we've also discussed about today is a lot of dua, because you want to purify yourself, to rectify yourself. Who's going to do that? Allah is going to do that. Make time for dua. Make a lot of dua to Allah. We're going to talk about this when we talk about the pledge at the end. And make dua to Allah for everything. And then Allah, it says here, when the Muslim is sincere in his resolve to be upright and seek Allah's pleasure, he then beseeches Allah with a throbbing, meek, sincere heart. Allah will certainly put him on the path of guidance and protect him from the evil of his nafs and from shaitan. And then he gives this example, right? And I thought this is good because it's a universal example. A young man stopped me, complaining to me in a state of anguish and pain. His soul was pushing towards evil. He was struggling to control it. And he said that university life would make his soul even more voracious, like his soul is like getting out of control. He said, how do I get out of this torment? How do I rid myself of this torment? And the Shaykh said, take this agony that you have and present it to Allah. Take this agony that you have and talk to Allah about it. Present it to Allah. Say, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm struggling with. And then Allah will strengthen you. Allah will give you means of overcoming this. Allah will answer supplication. He will free you from this torment. And that's why it says a person will end up in that state where he's forced to stretch his hands out to Allah and seek help. And he goes on here to talk about this, and he says, also choose good times, right? If you want to choose good times for dua. One thing that we mentioned later, of course, is after the five fardu prayers, but you can also do, or the best time actually is right before dawn, right? Because Allah says in Surah Al-Dhariyat, ayah 18, right? In those pre-dawn hours, they seek forgiveness, right? It's a time when everyone's asleep and the din of the world, and the disobedient people, it's all died down. And you want to make wudu, and you want to spend some time with Allah. Again, like I was saying before last week, it's a conversation. It's not a give me list, a list of demands. And Allah will help you. So this is a very, very important thing, is to have this constant state of dua, regardless of your state. Even if you feel that, oh, I don't have any major problems now, but you need Allah. Ask Allah for the simple things, the quote unquote simple things, for the next meal, to get you home safely, to help you have a good night's sleep, to keep your heart at ease, and so on and so forth. So many du'as that you can make. There's so many things that you can ask Allah for. And then the last thing, the advice is avoiding consumption of the unlawful, like checking. It says it's negative. Why? Because it's leaving off. This isn't positive in terms of doing. It's negative in terms of leaving off and avoiding. That's why he calls it negative. So you want to make sure that you are not consuming anything that is haram, anything that is doubtful, because then that can affect you, right? That can have an effect on your heart and make you weak. So this is very, very important. It's not something to be taken lightly, and it can affect the validity of your du'as or the acceptance of your du'as, right? So this is very, very important. Then there's a few things we finish up with. He says, names and titles don't concern us, right? Because again, this will lead us back to the tribalism. People are like, well, what do we call this? Is this tasawwuf? Is this suluk? Is this tawbih? All these things I'm mentioning, these four things. Like, no, this is Islam in its essence. Islam in its essence is your slave to Allah. You're doing your dhikr, you're doing your dua, you're staying away from the unlawful. You're reflecting on Allah's creation, you're reflecting on Allah's mercy, you're reflecting on everything Allah does for you, reflecting on your own life. This is the essence of Islam. It's not important what we call these things. Then another point he makes here, again, our problems are moral, not intellectual, right? We have to work on ourselves, we have to better ourselves. We don't want to get caught away in all these abstract discussions. There's a lot of people theorizing. What's the way forward? How should we be as Muslims? Should we adopt parts of the Communist Manifesto? Should we be more capitalist? Should we be more libertarian? Should we be socialists? Should we have this? People have all these intellectual talks, but that's not what our problem is. We know what the problems are, but we have to work on ourselves. It's a moral application. So he says, the conclusion is, we want to work, we want to have sincerity. We want to have sincerity in everything we do, and Allah will reward that sincerity, and Allah will give us tawfiq in our sincerity. That's what he talks about. And the last few things, and I want to finish on, is, again, he makes this point about we don't want to be all outward and all inward, stuck in the zawiyah. But he finishes this thing. He says, let us focus on, again, this is how he finishes the book. He says, let's make a pledge. Let's try to implement this in our lives, or at least most of this. And this is what I'll finish on. So he says, we wake up for Fajr every day. I mentioned earlier, some people sleep through Fajr. Right? I was too busy last night marching, so I slept through Fajr. No. You begin for Fajr, and if you're able to, go to pray in congregation in the nearest masjid. We may focus on Allah the Exalted. That we leave whatever we are doing, wherever we are, regardless of circumstances, when we hear the call to prayer, we make our way to the nearest masjid. That we exert every effort to ensure their precious lifetime is not spent in anything but obedience to Allah. Right? We're always a day of obedience to Allah. Even if we're relaxing and doing recreation, it's halal. It's righteous stuff. When we go to bed, we all remember that maybe when we lie down right now, we won't wake up. Before you go to bed, you do that, you do what's called muhasabah. You take yourself to account and you say, SubhanAllah, maybe tomorrow morning I won't wake up. Allah forgive me for everything I've done. Accept me. If you are going to take my, this is a dua, it's one of the du'as in the sunnah. If you are going to take my soul back tonight, forgive it. Have mercy on me. And again, these mu'awwidatan, surah al-Ikhlas, surah al-Kafirun, these are all things I mentioned. You can find books of du'as, or there's even apps like islambook.com. You have these du'as like du'as like Adhkar al-Nawm. He says, when the world presents itself, its blessings and comforts to you, or its afflictions and evils, do not forget the reality of the entire universe. No one gives, no one withholds, no one benefits, no one harms except Allah. You keep that in mind and attach your heart to Him alone. Thank Him for your blessings, be patient with your trials, and just be begging at His door. Then he makes this one, again, this is really important, this one here. That's why it's bigger font. When you have done your fard prayers, do not move from your place until you've stretched your hands towards Allah and made a trembling supplication to Him, a trembling dua to Him that comes from the depths of your soul with humility and submissiveness. And talk to Allah and ask Allah for whatever it is. For whatever it is, nothing is too big, nothing is too small. He said, there's no good in a defective prayer that's not concluded with the slave's humility and fervent supplication of his master. If you notice that people are angry with you, exert yourselves that Allah being pleased with you is the best consolation that will make you forget about their anger. People might be angry with you, but then you ask yourself, is Allah pleased with me? Okay. And that will give you peace. When your nafs feels like you want to backbite someone, remember you have flaws too. You have flaws too. And if Allah were to lift the veil from you, your flaws would be out there and people will be saying things about you. So you want to remember that, to guard your tongue. Remember that the kaabah that you present to Allah, or exert every effort to make sure the kaabah that you present to Allah tomorrow is a pure heart that has been cleansed from the filth of hatred and malice. Right? And again, you want to ask Allah for that. And when you have these feelings of jealousy or arrogance, ask Allah to remove that feeling from you. And say, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to have like envy towards my Muslim brother or sister. I don't want to have jealousy. I don't want to have rancor. When your soul is pushing towards anything else unlawful, remember your death. Remember your death. When obedience is abundant, remembering death will only decrease it, right? It's always good to have a constant remember of death, always to remember that it could happen at any moment. It could happen at any moment, right? The older person is not closer to death than the younger person. The person in the airplane is not closer to death than someone in his own bed. It's all down to Allah. If Allah wants your heart to stop, it'll stop, and that's the end of it. And the last thing, ask Allah to grant your brother tawfiq so I can remain firm on this pledge, and I will do the same for you. Well, alhamdulillah. So I'll finish there. Was that less than an hour? I think it was. Okay, inshallah. So I'll open the floor for any questions you might have. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Maybe do the work, how they work, and if somebody is able to approach to extend, if they can't have like the deeds of the heart, somebody that they feels fear or feels like sometimes like you know certain things kind of creep up here in your brain and your heart, that kind of like, and you're still supposed to approach this work, or should you leave it off or?
Okay, I'm not so okay. Excellent question. So your question essentially, correct me if I'm wrong here, is you're saying like if you are engaged in say like dawah work or community work, and then these feelings creep into your mind where you might, I don't know, if you think proud of yourself, or you might have jealousy or envy, and then you're asking yourself, what do I do at that point? The fact that you are able to observe those feelings in yourself is a very positive sign. The fact that you're able to say, hey, I can sense myself feeling a bit arrogant. I can sense myself feeling a bit proud. I can sense myself looking down on people who don't do this, right? That's a good sign. That's a good sign. So what you should do instead is you should continue. You should continue with whatever work you're involved in, and then keep making dua to Allah. And maybe Allah gave this to you so that you have a bond with Allah, you have a link with Allah, another link with Allah. You keep asking Allah to protect you from that. right? And it's a way to keep you sincere because it's an amazing blessing that you're actually aware of that. You're actually aware of that because that's another because it's the disease of ujb. It's like there's a story of Abdullah ibn Mubarak. He's one of the 40 qadis on Imam Abu Hanifa's panel, and he was a very wealthy man. And there's a story of him where he was doing what's called the rabita, which is like it's equivalent to fighting jihad. It's equivalent to physical jihad. But what it means is he was there with other Muslims, and they were guarding like a weak part in the border, right? They're guarding it's nighttime, and they're guarding this like it's like a narrow part of a river or a lower part of a mountain range or so forth, right? But it's basically it's a weak point where an enemy army could invade from, right? So they're there at night. They're literally in a state of jihad because it's the Rabita, and they're reciting Quran, right? Because they're waiting, they're just reciting Quran to each other. So then one of the men comes to Abdullah Mubarak and says, "Is there anyone right now who's doing anything more rewardable than what we're doing right now?" Right? So he says to Abdullah Mubarak. Now, objectively, you could say no, right? Because you're in a state of jihad, it's the middle of the night, everyone's asleep, it's at the Tahajjud time, and you're reciting Quran, there's huge reward here. But what Abdullah Mubarak realized, he realized if I affirm his question, I might put ujb, this disease of ujb, which is like self satisfaction. I might put that disease in his heart, and then he would lose reward. So Abdullah Mubarak, he said, well, there is someone out there. There is someone out there who has great reward. And he said, it's the man who gets up in the middle of the night and he checks on his family. He checks on his wife. He checks on his children. He sees that they're feeling a bit cold. So he pulls the blanket up over them and warms them up. And then he goes back to bed. Right? He gets a nice, sweet answer. But he did that just to keep people within check. So the fact that you're actually thinking about yourself and that saying you're checking yourself, that's a positive sign. So a person should definitely continue in that state, inshallah. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. So okay, let me okay. What if you want to commit to a specific worship, like Mukut at the Fajr, but you can't hold yourself to do it. As soon as you get sleepy, you sleep and you don't feel like there's a purpose behind your jihad enough. How do you get the motivation? Okay, so thank you. Excellent question. What you do is you want to build yourself up bit by bit, right? Again, this is a marathon. It's not a 100-yard dash, people, right? So if you're not in the habit of staying up from Fajr all the way to Duha time, if that's not your habit, you've never done that before, right? You can't say to yourself, that's it. From tomorrow morning after Fajr, I'm going to read the entire Hizb Imam Nawawi. I'm going to read the entire daily portion of the Dalal Khairat and the Juz al-Quran. You're not going to do it because you've never done it before, right? Or you might do it one day and then but day two, you'll be exhausted. So you want to say to yourself, okay, what's something reasonable that I can do? If I want to get this advocate, I think I can read Yasin. I think Yasin is easy. And I can do like the Athqar al-Sabah from such and such book. Okay, the morning Athqar. And so you start with that. So this is doable. And then slowly but surely build yourself up. Don't bite off more than you can chew. It's an old statement. So slowly but surely build yourself up. Okay, once you feel that, okay, Yasin and the Athqar al-Sabah, that's easy. Okay, now I'm going to chuck in maybe an extra 5 pages of the Quran. Maybe I'll try to do a khatam. I'll throw in an extra 5 pages, extra 6 pages. Maybe I'll add in, the weird of Imam Nawawi or something. That maybe I'll add in, half of that daily portion of Dalal Khairat or something. But you slowly but surely build yourself up. Don't put too much on yourself, right? Slowly, right? Always think of relationship with Allah as like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Slowly but surely build yourself up. Don't bite off more than you can chew. How do you know if you follow your Shaykh for the sake of ta'ah and love for them instead of the sake of Allah, and you follow their knowledge even if they are tribalists? What do you do if you're afraid that the Shaykh is a wali of Allah? Okay. This is a bit more complicated. What you have to be aware of is you'd want to see warning signs, right? So sometimes it could be a case with a tariqah maybe the sheikh himself is a wali of Allah, but he might have people around him who are using him for their own ends. That happens. There could be people around him who use him for their own, tribalistic ends. But you want to be making sure that you have your own personal relationship with Allah, and that you are not, and that the sheikh is the assistant. One of the things I wrote in my book, The Big Step. You have to think of it this way: when you think of a sheikh, right? Your sheikh in tarbiyah, or your sheikh for suluk, he's like a boxing trainer, right? Think of that analogy, right? He's going to train you. He's going to show you what exercise to do. He's going to show you what weights to lift, how much jump rope to do, what foods to eat. Okay. But at the end of the day, you're the one who's getting in the ring with shaitan. You're the one who's getting in the ring with your nafs in the dunya, not him. Some people have this idea like, well, I've taken bayah. As if the sheikh's entering the ring, right? He's doing it for you. You can just kick back and relax. So no. So you have to make sure that the sheikh is in that supporting role. He's telling you what things to do to protect yourself as you have that battle with shaitan and your nafs and so forth. You're not letting the sheikh do it for you, and you're not letting the sheikh like sort of take over your relationship with Allah. No, he's there to help you, not control you. So you want to keep that in mind. And do that in the best way, and not get caught up in having bad thoughts about anyone or assuming the worst of anyone, but just make sure that your relationship with Allah is sound, and that the sheikh is helping you in that, and the sheikh is making clear that he's helping you, and you are the one who has to step into the ring with these enemies. I hope that makes sense. Alhamdulillah. Please let me know if you need more. Yes, Said.
So, he spoke a lot about, like a lot of the organizations are doing work, maybe like we said, like secular ways or like
Yeah.
ways, right? And then, kind of pointing out like issues with the organization.
Yeah.
What kind of amendments do we have to make for organizations?
Mm.
And then obviously you mentioned like the personal purification as well.
Yeah.
But what do the organizations have to fix? Like what amendment, like what should it look like? An Islamic organization doing work for the deen that will be successful.
Okay, well, what an Islamic organization should be doing to be successful is it should be implementing those 4 points that we laid out, right? So it's like, telling the people of the organization that, okay, we are only as strong as our weakest link. If you're going to be part of this organization, we want you to be someone who takes the time to reflect on Allah and your own mortality. We want you to be someone who has regular adhkar and awrad. We want you to be someone who makes a lot of dua. We want you to be someone who avoids the haram. We want you to be someone who, like the points made in the pledge, right? So the organization is bringing people up and nurturing people, right? That's one of those things that people say about like Salahuddin Ayyubi, like when he was with his army. This is like before the Battle of Hattin, before they took Jerusalem back from the Crusaders. May Allah give it back to us. He would see his soldiers like praying like tahajjud at night, and he would say, "This is where the victory comes from. This is where the victory comes from." And one of the things that people don't appreciate, because Imam Multi has a book on jihad, and he says min shurutul jihad mujahideen. Like one of the main conditions of jihad is you have to have mujahideen. And a mujahid is not just a guy it's not just a tough guy who fights. Mujahid is a man of Allah. He fights the inner jihad and the outer jihad. So what happens? Because people ask this question, because again, we're talking about inward sin. Just ask the timeline. Okay, the papal bull. I think I know why they call it papal bull. 1095 is issued, right? Telling Christians from Europe to take over Jerusalem and Palestine. The Christians arrive in 1099 AD, and they kill everything inside. They're up to their ankles in blood. It's an absolute horrific travesty, an atrocity. The Muslims don't take it back until 1187, in the Battle of Hattin. That's when so this is 88-year gap where the Muslims don't have Jerusalem. And it's like, well, what's happening? What's happening is Salahuddin Ayyubi and Nuruddin Zengi are cleaning up internal problems. They're saying we can't deal with the external enemy until we deal with the internal enemy. Like, so what in that period of time, they get rid of the Hashishia cult in Syria, right? It's because they're called Hashishia because they're smoking hash and doing funky things, right? That's where the word assassins comes from. they removed the Fatimid Shiites from Egypt. And that's why Al-Azhar University is a Sunni institute. And then what they do is all over Sham and Egypt, they build madrasas. They build madrasas everywhere, right? All over Sham and Egypt. And they raise a whole generation of young men who are not just men, but in the sense that they are tulab al-ilm. They're members of the Quran. They love Allah and His Messenger. They pray tahajjud. They live righteous, upstanding lives. And it's from those people that Salah makes an army. He doesn't just grab anyone, right? He works on the inward. That's what they spent their time doing. Right? You have to think about it. It's like, can you imagine how the Crusaders must have thought when they saw this massive army coming from Damascus? It was just going like past them to Egypt. Like, what are they doing? No, we got to sort out the inward stuff first, then we can address the outward. And that's what Imam Salahuddin Ayyubi, because he was also a scholar. People forget that he taught a lot of these institutes as well. He wasn't necessarily like a top faqih of the Shafi method, but he was a scholar and he could teach. So that's how you make an organization. Your organization is made up of people like that. That's what I'm getting at. See, Zaid? Sorry, follow up. Yeah.
So, like, in Salahuddin Ayyubi's time, he had like states as well, right?
Yeah.
They started with that, and then they had like madrasa in the people.
Okay.
Do we have like a state, you could say, in modern times, we really do something like that? And we don't really have that. How would you?
Why are you saying that you need a state?
Well, because like, these are like institutional establishments.
What, to ask people to make dua?
Madrasa.
Yeah, okay, but I was just giving that as an example of working on the inward, right? What I'm saying is, what Salahuddin Ayyubi was doing was, before attacking and going to war with the external enemy, he did everything he could to fix the internal aspect of things, right? Like he thought deeply about, okay, what kind of soldiers do I want to go into battle with? I want to go into battle with righteous people who fear Allah. That's who I want to have with me. I don't want to have just, the guy who's, tall and muscular and tough, but he doesn't care about his tahajjud, he doesn't care about his I don't want that, because Allah won't give us victory, right? It's like Umar al-Khattab said the same to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas before the Battle of Qadisiyah. He said Allah doesn't give us victory because of greater numbers or equipment. Because it says that our enemies, they always have like greater numbers and equipment, but Allah gives us victory because we disobey Allah less. We disobey Allah less than they do. And that's where Allah gives us success. So my point is, what you can do with an organization is you can instill that culture of, we are people who have adhkar, we're people who make dua, we're people who ask Allah for success, we're people who have, each and every one of us has his or her own personal relationship with Allah. That's what you want to instill in your organization. That's how people feel, and then you're constantly reminding the people working around you. So I'm aware of your roles, Zaid. Right? You want to make sure you're surrounded by. Staring at him. Right? That you're trying to instill in people that culture where you have an organization of people around you, and your concern, everyone's concern, is pleasing Allah. You're pleasing Allah, drawing nearer to Allah, growing your relationship with Allah, and it's not about one's personal agenda, or like you're not here because, like, I want to put this on my CV when I graduate. It looks so good, right? All these kinds of things, right? That's not concrete. That doesn't require a massive apparatus. It's instilling that kind of culture, right? So for example, because you're Hanafi, right? Exactly. So Hanafis, like you guys have, unlike the Shafis, you guys have like group dua, like after Fajr prayers. That's something you could start with, right? Just something as basic as that. Like if you lead prayers, because you're the president, you lead prayers afterwards, you make dua, you say, and you make group dua, you say, oh Allah, make us all sincere for your sake. Make us, Allah, don't let us forget our purpose for why we're here. Oh Allah, keep us straight, and so on and so forth. Right? There's a lot of things. You just want to install that culture in your organization, where we are doing this for Allah, and there's this attitude that everything we do is based around the prayer times, everything we function, all these things. You want to put all these things together, and that's where the success lies. Does that make sense? Yes, Abdullah. Sorry? It's not in the book. Some Shafis do, but it's not in the books.
There's the kind of wonderful. That was.
Yeah.
I really think like during seeing within myself in society around us that this pandemic of love that this mindless consumption, products, social media,
Yeah.
all this stuff. I really see that as one of the big things. So I wanted to ask them, how does one instill this habit of developing the in this age of love, and how do we do that?
Okay. Okay. So, like I said before, alhamdulillah, because the question is a brilliant question to ask about how do we how do we do proper tafakkur and tadabbur in this day and age? Aisha, I'm coming to you, mashallah. You guys see that question? No. Oh, yeah, there's another question coming up. Type. So, like I said before, you obviously want to shut out the social media. And as I say to you, you want to turn off the notification on your phone because that will just keep disturbing you all the time. There was a sister this morning in the study circle. She said online, she said that there was a scholar in Yemen who I don't think he meant to, but I think he accidentally turned off his correspondence on his phone for like 4 years or something and just studied. Right. And then when the 4 years were over, he opened his phone and he just caught up with everyone's news in a few minutes. He's like, what are you gonna miss out? It's like, oh, so-and-so got married, so-and-so had a kid, so-and-so got a new job. Right? It's like you're not missing out on a whole bunch of things, right? But we had this strong like FOMO, fear of missing out. Ooh, I haven't checked my phone in 20 minutes. What's happening in the world? No, you're like this. So there's that aspect of it. But once that's like shut out, there's other methods that people mention. Like Dr. Shadi has this method he always tells people to do is have your smartphone for like only set times of the day, and then have a flip phone. Get one of those old like Motorola's or Nokia's or Sony Ericsson's. Do you guys remember these? I think you're about 2 or 3 years old, right? But those old phones that don't have they have like green screens like Game Boys. Okay, I'm really showing my age here. But those phones like someone can only call you on those. Yeah, do you know that? Like phones were originally for calling people. That's what they were for. That's all they did. You just called someone. So if you have a phone like that and you give that number to people that matter to you, like your husband, your wife, your kids, your parents, maybe your work, that's it. So you make it sure that like, during certain hours of the day, you're simply not available. And you tell your family, okay, there's an emergency, call me. That's it. Leave me alone. Then what you can do is you can find a time for defect and tadabbur. And good times of the day, for example, I find myself like duha is good. Like Salat duha is good in the morning. Like if you once you pray Salat duha and you've done your morning adhkar, you just sit back. Just sit back and just look out the window and just think, just reflect. Right? The phone's away, nothing's there. After Isha is a good time because that tends to be also a quiet time during the day. The Tahajjud is a brilliant time as well. But again, it also depends on your schedule, what kind of your routine is like. But you definitely want to find a good time where like no one's really around, you're not really expected anywhere, the family's asleep, kids or whatever it is, and you just sit and reflect. You just sit and reflect, right? You might want to start. When I mention this to people, you might want to start like maybe think like what do I think about? Right? Or how do I protect myself from thinking about like nonsense, right? You might want to start, and this is something I covered mostly in like depression anxiety courses, but start like a gratitude list maybe. You guys know what those are, right? So you could write down 10 things you're grateful for, right? Day one's an easy one. Day one is you talk about the obvious things like your health and your faith and your family and your job and so forth. But then day two and onwards, you have to start being more creative, right? Like, what are some good things that happen today that I can be grateful to Allah for, right? Not just be grateful, no, grateful to Allah for, right? And you want to list out like this the good things that happened today. Oh yeah, like so and so opened the door for me, so and so helped me, so and so got me a cup of coffee, so and so all these things you list out, and then from that you can actually sit back and think, wow, I actually had a pretty good day today because what the gratitude list this does. Right? Because Allah says, Lin shakartum lazidannakum, Surah Ibrahim ayah 8, like if you're grateful to me, I'll increase you. What that does is you start seeing every day as a good day because you start seeing the good things every day. Right? And you train your brain to see good things. You train your brain to see the positive happen in a day. the good things that happened to you, the fortunate things that happened to you, the people who helped you, the people who were kind to you, all these things come together, and that just puts you in a good mood, and that's something you can reflect on. You think, oh, subhanAllah, actually, good things happening. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And even when you think about like, okay, so you might say, okay, on my way home from university today, I got a flat tire, but then so and so showed up and helped me. So and so helped me put on the new tire, or so and so, so and so helped me, or I was able to call someone and they came quickly, and whatever it is, right? Yeah. So these are things that you can do. Inshallah. I hope that answers your question. Barakallahu feek. Another question? Yes, Miriam.
For why where, for example, or when the Qadr to pray for it is can be left off. For example, in these things of critical Jamaat,
Yeah.
they think that organizing a conference
Yeah.
with connect release, so I think it's for kifaya, so it's technically more affordable than doing great or praying sunnah prayer or going to much prayer. And this is one example from both Jamaat. And another thing I've heard from students of knowledge, for example, that they're tight on time, they, let's say, for a full-time job, have families to look after. So they would choose to study instead of doing
Instead of doing what?
instead of doing
Okay. All right. So, alhamdulillah, there's two questions there. Barakallahu feek. Okay. So the first thing is, when something is a fard kifaya, that means that not everyone has to do it, right? And I don't understand why it would be difficult, like especially when you're having a conference with lots of people there. I don't understand why you can't, like if you're organizing a conference and you're going to have like lectures all day, I don't see why it's hard to plan the lectures around the prayer times. I don't see how that's complicated. Like we're going to have a morning session, and then we're going to have Salat al-Dhuhr at 1 p.m., and then we'll have a lunch, and then we'll have another conference, and then we'll break for Asr, right? I don't see why that can't be organized, right? Like I'm sure when's Hanafi Asr time today, Zaid? Yeah, like we could plan to pray Asr and Jama'at 7, right? It's not a massively complicated thing. So I wouldn't take that argument so seriously, because the only thing I've come across, I remember it's something as far as the ayn I can understand, right? Because I remember one time I was doing an online fit class. I was in Morocco, and my teacher was in the UK, Sheikh Mehdi, and we were doing like, this was like a long time ago, we're doing like just basic like Tahara, and the adhan went for Maghrib, or the adhan went for Isha. And I said, "Oh, can we take a break? I want to go to the masjid. I want to pray in the masjid." And he said, in this case, he said, "No, well, going to the masjid is recommended. That's mundub. But what you're learning right now is fard ayn, right? Because it's a fiqh class, right? It's fard ayn. You have to know this. So you can do this now, and you can pray later." Okay, right? You can see a situation like that. But using the example of what we're doing on the whole is fard kifaya, which again, that's kind of questionable because we have to look at the contents and everything. That's a bit of a gray area. So I wouldn't buy into that. But again, if it's something like fiqh or things like this, yes, because there can be these are mentioned in the fiqh books. There can be genuine reasons for not going to the masjid. I mean, you're not being able to pray in jama'ah because you have to look after your family, because you're looking after a sick person. There's lots of reasons. So obviously, what Imam Abul is saying is, if you're free of those, yes. Your second question, this is true. This is true because there's Imam an-Nawawi mentions this in the Majmu'ah, because he says what we mean here, we don't mean like the complete abandonment of adhkar, but let's say if someone were to do more studying than adhkar, or more studying the recitation of the Quran and these kinds of things, Imam an-Nawawi says that he says it's more rewardable to do the studying, because the adhkar and the Quran, that benefits you. But if you're studying the religious knowledge, and your objective is that you're then going to go teach, or you're going to go write, then you're going to benefit more people, not just yourself, right? So yes, if you're going to be studying Islamic knowledge, and your intention definitely is that you're going to take this knowledge on, and you're going to be teaching other people, because especially if it's something like fiqh, like especially, whereas if it's just like, debate material, that's why you're not doing the car, because you want to look up like quotes, and you want to get out to someone in a debate, or you're finding like interesting, like trivia that you know, it's interesting to you, but you're not going to share with anyone. Then no, in that case, obviously the Adhkar and the Quran would be more beneficial, right? More rewarding. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's because that's what you find, because there's a story of there's a story of Imam Shafi where Imam Ahmed visited him, and Imam Shafi's daughter made do you guys know the story? Imam Shafi's daughter made the food, right? And she says to no, Imam Shafi says to daughter, she says, you know, this big sheikh is this big imam's visiting us, and so on and so forth. And then when Imam Ahmed comes and she comes out, she serves the food. Imam Ahmed, he has like a big portion of the food. And then at night, he spends his whole night just reading. He's just reading and writing all night long, right? She doesn't see any tahajjud. So she asks, so the daughter asked Imam Shafi the next day, she says, you know, you said he was this big imam, but I saw him eat a lot of food, and then I didn't see him doing any tahajjud at night. Imam Shafi checks back to Imam Ahmed. Imam Ahmed says, well, number one, as soon as I saw that food, I just saw barakah in the food. Right? There's a lot of barakah in the food. That's why I ate more of the food, because I can see so much barakah in it. And he said, number two, I was up all night because I was researching fiqh masail for people. That's why I was reading and writing all night long, because people had asked me questions and there were issues that had come up, and I was researching them. Right? And so the argument is, yeah, doing that is more beneficial, more rewardable than spending the whole night in tahajjud, right? Because he's not just benefiting himself, he's benefiting the people who've asked him and anyone else who has the issue. You see? Should we, any other questions here? There's one more question online. Yes, sir.
It's like, advice is about, like morning and evening prayer.
Mhm.
And I think like, a lot of us in West, at least my experience with it, I learned about it, recently, or recent years.
Mm.
Typically, people don't know.
Yeah.
morning and evening prayer.
Uh-huh.
It explains, you already spoke towards it a number of times, but something maybe you can start with. And then everything happens in morning and evening.
Okay. All right. Now, there's a book that I've translated on the Nawab Books website. It's a small pocket-sized book. It's called Remembrances and Etiquettes, the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's a short, like pocket-sized book, right? So that's if you want to have a pocket-sized book. Obviously, everyone has a phone nowadays. There's a good website called and there's an app, islambook.com. It has the adhkar, and it has them like in Arabic, and I think it has them transliterated as well. All right, so this is the website. Ignore the ads. This is the Arabic. So like adhkar al-sabah, adhkar al-masa, adhkar ba'd al-salah, like evening, morning. That's what you want to focus on for now. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. MashaAllah. Yeah, there you go. More the books. Thank you. Right. So, and this is useful. You get it as an app as well. There you go. You can tells you how many times you can click on it. It will do time. You can refresh it and so forth. And it's all laid out for you. There's like 30 things. But again, if you find it like cumbersome to do them all in one day, maybe it's okay. There are 30 adhkar here. Let's see if I can just do like 10. Like day one, do it and just build up from there. Yes, sir. Yeah. Hosn Muslim. Yeah. You might want to get an app is also. Yes, sir, man.
This site they have the word of the day, morning of God.
Okay.
Play that as much as you can.
Just play it.
Play it and then.
Okay. And okay. And say it along, yeah. Yeah.
You can follow along.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, there's another option, right? So this is a good one. I think this one does in different languages somewhere, but this is useful. This is just very, very simple. So you can have this on your phone, you can have this on your laptop, and you can just do it, right? And the ones you want are there. Like this is called a sabah, and then you have like al-masa, which is very similar. Just the du'as are like oh Allah bless me in the evening, right? Or like the difference is like Allahumma inni amsaytu as opposed to inni asbahtu and so forth. Simple place to start. And again, if you look at the numbers in the corners, in the right-hand corner, it's like 30, right? That might be a lot. That might feel a lot for someone. Okay, so maybe just start like 10 or something, right? In Hosn Muslim, Suleiman, how many do they have in the morning?
There's 20.
20, yeah. And that's an app as well. What do you type in? Just Hisnul?
Not, it's literally divided out to like morning drive, evening drive, when you're sick,
Yeah. There you go. It's also the other book that I published in Nawa book. So yeah, is that yeah, there's a few resources out there, mashallah. So whether you prefer to have a book, whether you prefer to have you might, and that's another thing, you might want to have both. You might want to have like a book on hand and your app, because sometimes you get sick of your phone. Sometimes you get sick of your phone and you just want to read a book, and then you won't get distracted. Yes. Yeah, mashallah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of pocket-sized dua books. And then if you have, because you have both, again, you get sick of your phone, you'll use the book, and then sometimes if you're too busy, you don't have access to the book, you have the phone, right? Especially if like you're married, you have kids, and everyone's asleep, and you can't turn your light on, and you're in a hotel room. The alcohol on your phone better work. These kind of things. Fine. I just want to answer a couple questions here. Okay, there we go. Now books. Yeah, thank you. MashaAllah. Islambook.com. Thank you. Can you find Hisnul Muslim, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. How do you combine between rida of qadr and anguish pain for the specific qadr? Allah, so believers will have no fear, nor has no Allah made this rule. Okay. When Allah talks about la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun, that's referring to the akhirah, Aisha. That's referring to the akhirah. So yes, we might, as believers, it's very normal to feel anguish and pain in this life. That's normal. But in the akhirah, that's lifted from us. We don't have this long-term anguish. That's what this is referring to. And we covered this, we give this example, I think last Thursday's class, we talked about Imam Abul, he talked about his own musibah, where yes, he has anguish, he has pain, but at the same time, he is content with Allah's qadr. So saying they're not grieved, again, that's referring to the akhirah. Like the believers will not have this permanent grief in the akhirah. That's why the Messenger of Allah said in a hadith, he said that this hadil ummatum marhuma, this is an ummah, this ummah is shown mercy. Adabuha fi dunya wa jazaa'uha fi akhirah, right? Its punishment is in this life, and its reward is in the next. So that it's an ummah that's shown mercy, right? So the yahzanun is not it's not referring to this, it's referring to this the next life, they will not have grief. Like anything else? Any questions? Yes. Yahzanun. Yeah, it is present tense, but it tends to be in the context of Allah will say la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun, and he's talking about the believers and but the fuller context is the akhirah. So even though it is the present tense, the fuller context is the akhirah, because the mudara, the fi'l mudara, like usually it means the present tense, but it can apply to the future as well. It's like saying fil akhirati hum la yahzanun, like in the akhirah they don't have grief. Right? Whereas in the dunya, yes, in the dunya we know we are tested, and we know that we have trials and tribulation that will grieve us and burden our souls. That's obvious. Oh, thank you. Muslim on Apple. Nothing on Android.
One more.
Okay, finish on. Anyone else? Are you all content? Alhamdulillah. So inshallah, may Allah grant us tawfiq to implement these points that we cover, these 4 points especially, and the pledge, inshallah. Ameen ya Rabb. Again, it's not an easy thing. It's a long-term thing. It's a campaign. Something we all have to work on, inshallah. So we ask Allah for tawfiq, inshallah. Oh wow, more links. Mashallah, this is great. We got like the in-person people and the online people. Everyone's helping out, mashallah. Hisnul Muslim on Google Play. See, lots of things we can do. Lots of things we can do. Yeah, and inshallah, yeah. So let's say we can do that. We can make time for contemplation. We can incorporate these morning adhkar, evening adhkar, Dalal khairat as well. There are apps for that too, and PDFs as well that you can put on your phone. Making time at the same time you make dua for tadabbur, you also make time for dua as well. And then of course, avoiding the haram is very obvious one. Alhamdulillah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.